So we're here today at Morelands Farm. We're up on High Meadow, and we're just gonna have a little fish today and a little run through sort of how I go about fishing for F1s and carp. We're just about to start now. We haven't big potted nothing. We haven't started anything like that. I've literally just got 5 or 6 4mm pellets in the pot, and I'm going to start off really negative. I got some 4mm and some micros on my side tray, and a few bits of corn. And the reason I started there, a little bite straight away then. But the reason I started like this is you always got to start a bit negative this time of year, because it's getting very, very cold. You've got to be really, really careful of how you start your matches. Little indication again then. Now that's only off like 4 or 5 pellets. So if I went in there and stuck a big pot in at the start, I'd probably get a few bites, but they'd tail off very quick. And it's just about managing your swim and trying to ease your way into your session. You notice my float is very, very dotted down quite a bit. This time of year now, you want to have your float almost as a pimple. And I'll show you in a little bit now how I go about that. I did do a video with Preston a good couple of years ago now, where I think it was top 5 winter tips, where they are straight away there, look. A little tiny dink on the float, and we're into a fish. Now, it's very, very clear because I can see the fish underneath the surface. It's not that deep here today. There's a great little F1 there. Little Morelands Farm F1. Fishing a little hard pellet at the moment, little hard 4mm. A size 20 KKM, 1211. I'm fishing a 6-inch hook length, which is, everyone probably thinking at home like, 4 inches and 3 inches for F1s, but I just feel that when there's not as many fish in your swim, a 6-inch hook length just gives you that little bit more of a natural fall. So you seem to get those extra bites on those harder days. So I'm just going to do the same again. Put 5 4mm in the pot. Just do a dunk in the water to keep the pellets in. I'm going to ship back out and try that again. Now a lot of people just start feeding micros. Now, the micros are very good for attracting fish into your peg, but when they're sort of feeding well, your swim can turn into a little bit of a mess with micros. So I try to start on 4mm if I can. So catch what you can. And then if they sort of die off a little bit, micros is a great way of sort of pulling fish back into your swim. Yeah, there's another little bite there. And that feels a better fish. Got the 11 Dura Slip in a short kit, which is fantastic elastic for all sorts of fish. And I do like fishing short kits when I'm targeting F1s with an odd carp. If it was mainly carp fishing, then I'd have a long kit in. But when it's not very deep, and it's more F1s than they are carp, I do like. Oh, that's a lovely F1, that is. That's a beautiful fish, that one is. That one. Beautiful golden F1. So at the moment it's really good. I mean, I've started now and I've had 2 fish. Just tapping in 4 to 5 4mm and fishing a 4mm on the hook. But as it happens, we're sat on our own at the moment in this lake. If this was a match situation, you might catch sort of 5 or 6 fish like this, and then they start to go a little bit iffy. Now if they do start to go a little bit iffy, that's when you start introducing a few micros then, just to try and drag a few fish into your swim. It's the same with ground bait. On places that allow ground bait, like a little nugget of crust expander. Will just give you that little bit more traction just to drag a fish into your swim. But I think at the start of a session, I think those 4 mils just nail down the fish a little bit more. Just give you that opportunity to catch them. You foul hook less fish, and especially when they're feeding well. Like I just had a little bite then, but that was a foul hooker. So if I was feeding micros here now, I think I'd probably have a few more line bites and a few more foul hooked fish. Just got a little simple shotting pattern of a bulk and one, just because it's quite a shallow lake. Sort of a bulk and one is a good starting point. And if it was a bit deeper, if it was sort of 5 or 6 foot, then I'd probably have a bulk and 2 to start with. But as you can see there now, I've caught those 2 fish quite quickly there, feeding 4 mils. I just had a little indication again, but they've wised up a little bit already. And this is with just me on the lake. Do you mean you'd think you'd be bagging by this point, but just wised up that little bit now already, just with 2 fish being caught. So this is sort of the area now where you think to yourself, there's not as many fish coming into my swim. So what I'll do now is I'll still keep a 4 mil on the hook. What I'll do is I'll grab a few micro pellets, just grab a little pinch of micros. I won't dunk them, but just a little pinch of micros, and I'll just feed them loose. Now this is a great way of dragging a few more fish into your swim. I don't know why, but those smaller particles falling for the water just seem to drag a few extra fish into your swim. Yeah, look at that. How instant that was. We've had 2 casts, just tapping in 4 or 5 4 mil pellets. And we caught 2 fish, and then we had 2 feeds where we had some indications, but they didn't really want to feed properly on it then. Just wised up a little bit. And just changing the micros, and you see the difference straight away. And this is what you should be doing in this session, is just gauging of how the fish want to feed. Not going there with like sort of preconceived plans. Just taking it nice and easy at the start. And that's a quality F1, that one. But it just goes to show, like, a little change in your feeding pattern makes a massive difference. Like I'll go out and tap a few micros in again, you know. But this is not to say that I'm gonna carry on feeding micros all match. Do you mean? Because like I said earlier, micros are great for dragging fish into your swim. But if you keep feeding them, it can turn into a bit of a mess. You end up with loads of foul hookers and, you know, fish all over your swim. It's brilliant for dragging a few fish in. You've got to try and swap and change just to keep fish coming and keep them on the hook. You know, you don't want to be going into your swim and foul hooking loads of fish, or having loads of missed bites like they are. Just a little indication then, little bite. So those micros are definitely dragging fish in, but I don't want it to turn into a mess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep an eye on that and just alter it as I'm fishing. It might be that I wet those micros up a little bit more. That's another bite there, but it might be that I wet those micros up a little bit more and feed them in little bowls so that it's harder for those fish to get to them. Oh, I might start feeding a few 4 mils again. You know, now that I've dragged a few fish into the area by feeding micros, I could feed those 4 mils and sort of nail them in the top lip every time. Because the easiest thing in the world is getting fish into your swim. The hardest thing is making sure that you put everyone in your net. So I'm just going to go back to 4 mils and just see, now there's a few fish in the swim after those 2 feeds of micros. Let's see if I can catch them on 4 mils, because I do feel that that's probably the best way to catch them without the swim sort of turning into a mess. Just tap those sort of 4 or 5 pellets in. Put your rig directly over the top. Having those sort of bigger particles and not as many of them just gives you sort of an opportunity to have a cleaner bite. Yeah, so look, no indications, no liners, just a very clean bite that was. Now it is very, very clear. You know, when I'm playing those fish, I can see them off the bottom. So it is very, very clear. So now a lovely Morelands Farm F1. Now this is a great way to start your match, but as the sort of day goes on and the air temperature warms up and more fish sort of start to come on the feed, then even this time of year there's a chance that you sort of could catch a few fish shallow. So I'm not going to start doing it yet, but if I was fishing a match, I would be thinking to myself that there's a good chance I might catch shallow later in the session. So what I need to do then is start feeding a few, not loads, but sort of 3 or 4, maybe 5 pellets at a time. Just sort of loose feeding a few, just pinging them with a catapult, just to create a little bit of bait falling through the water to see if I can catch them. Now you're not going to catch them sort of like you do in the summer, sort of 10-inch, 12-inch deep. Sometimes you do, but it's very, very unlikely. You normally catch them a little bit deeper than that, sort of like 2 to 3 foot normally. There's a few fish in my swim now where when I started on the 4 mils, I caught a few fish quite quickly, and I quickly got indications and didn't get anything on the hook. And a little change to micros brought a few fish back in, but now I'm back on those 4 mils and the bites are just so much cleaner and so much better. But I've always got those micros there to drag fish back into the swim if I need be. Don't be afraid to change your feeding patterns when you're fishing, because when you've got feeding fish in front of you, that's when you learn the most about the feeding patterns. Do you mean? Sometimes they want it a certain way, and you can plod your way through a match and catch. That's a lovely fish, that one is. You can plod your way through a match and catch fish regular all day, but not really understand what's going on in your swim. Where by changing your feeding patterns, you can make things a lot quicker and a lot better. So always sort of play around with that. And like I said, always try and look to catch shallow when you can. Like today it's very, very cold. Very, very cold and very cold wind, but the wind's off our back. So sort of later in the session, I would expect to catch an odd fish shallow. Maybe not bagging up shallow, but an odd fish. we're just coming to the end of the session. You know, we fished hard pellets today because it's still not quite cold enough to be fishing expanders. But most importantly today it's been warm enough for the fish to come off the bottom, but not warm enough for them to come up and feed shallow. So we did have a go shallow, but never caught anything shallow. Had a couple of indications, a couple of bites, but nothing actually come up and fed properly. So one of the noticeable things about today has been your feeding patterns. So we started off sort of feeding 4 or 5 4mm pellets, caught a few fish. Then it went a bit iffy, like if there wasn't enough fish coming into the peg. Now every time that's happened, all I've had to do is feed a couple of feeds of micros, and it just drags those fish straight back into your peg. Now another thing is, I said at the start about dotting your floats down. So dotting your float down is a must, I think, this time of year. But what I've done today is when more fish have sort of come into my swim, I've just moved my sort of trimmer shot up out of the way, just so I can distinguish what's a bite and what's not. Because when I had it down, dotted right down, you'd have a little indication, and you lift on it, and you'd either foul hook a fish or you'd miss a bite. Now just by having my float a little bit more bristle on show, I could read those bites a little bit better. I'll just show you in a minute what I mean about those trimmer shot. Yeah, that's a bite there. So that's a foul hook there. We haven't had many foul hookers today, and that's typical as I'm talking to you. So just fed micro. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed some 4mm pellets this time and try and pin them back down, because every time we've had a few too many fish in the peg, we just fed a few 4mm and it just pins them back down into that area, and you can catch them in the mouth end. The micros seem to drag a few too many fish in, but once I sort of bring this rig in now, I'll just show you quickly what I mean about the trimmer shot and making my float, making a little bit more bristle on show, because it's a good little tip that my good mate Andy Crocker showed me some years ago. It really does make a difference. So I'll show you that in a minute. But you can see just then, by feeding a few 4mm again, just settles those fish down again. You're able to get one in the mouth. But you can't keep feeding 4mm because they tend to drift off. You've got to feed those micros every now and again just to drag fish back into your swim. But that's been a big thing today, is your feeding. Once you've got your feeding right, you then caught the fish. But it's quite sort of plain to see that with it being colder, with the nights being colder and the mornings being colder, they are getting a bit sort of iffy and a bit finicky. So altering your feeding has worked brilliant today. Fishing a small hook, you know, in the winter and sort of the later autumn months, I fine down a lot. So I got an 013 mainline rig, an 011 hook length, like I said, a 20 kkm. I'm using a 4mm hard pellet, so I want the smallest hook I can. I don't want to be having a great big gaff. Get the smallest hook I can. I'm using a 4x14 float today. You know, it's only sort of 3.5, 4 foot deep. Probably get away with a 4x12, but I'm using a 4x14 just because the wind's off our back and it's pushing the float out a bit and making the float move a bit. So I'm just using a 4x14 just to keep it that a little bit more steady and a little bit more tight. Like I said, I got number 10 dropper, a little bulk. I have put a sort of gaps between the bulk. I don't like I don't like to have all my bulk together. I like to have little gaps between them. I think that's important with bite detection. If you get a bite and it's pulling the whole sort of, what's there, 1, 2, 3, 5 number 8s. If they're pulling the whole 5 number 8s, there's a lot more sort of resistance on the bite. Where if there's a little gap between them, you're pulling 1 number 8 individually in a train. So I think it's just a lot better where you saw your bite indication to have a little gap between that bulk. And I have got two number 9 droppers, or 2 number 9 back shots, sorry, there, just to hold the rig tight above my float, because you know we're looking for those little tiny sharp bites, and you need to have your line tight above it. But we've had a fantastic sort of session. I hope you've learned a little bit about, you know, late autumn and winter hard pellet fishing. You know, we've had a lovely day talking about it, so I hope you learned a little bit, and I think we'll pull the fish out, have a little look at them, and we'll end the session here. And don't forget to like and subscribe the Preston Innovations YouTube channel, and you'll keep up to date with all these videos that we do and competitions we do as well. And also, don't forget to hit that notification button, because you'll never miss another video.